Welcome back everyone. Pulverize has nearly everyone in Season of Blood showing their spirit, and although it excels at leveling, that's just the surface. The build is continuing to break new ground by the day, and we're going to look at some of the strongest aspects, Paragon progression, worthwhile stats, Vampiric Powers, and why the build works. At the end of the video, we'll even cover some variants that have been popping up for those that like the concept of the build, but are looking for a version that might include some twists. Aspect of the Air Sign Horror, and this is the most crucial aspect, which is great because it's available for completing a normal dungeon, so you can ensure you have access to this from 1 to 100, and if you're doing the campaign, you'll be able to get it before it's an issue. Don't worry. This gives some AoE damage at the point of impact after using Pulverize, but more importantly, it transforms it into an Earth skill, which means all these carefully placed skill points like Resonance, which triples the damage increase after using a Storm skill, or the trio of Crushing Earth, Stone Guard, and Safeguard all become active. In the case of Safeguard, this provides Fortify on Earth crits. The Ballistic aspect now provides +2 to Pulverize's skill, and at this point you can probably smell what the rock is cooking, but there's more. Aspect of Retaliation will provide additional damage to core skills, aka Pulverize, while Fortified and Aspect of Quicksand now slows enemies, afflicting them with a crowd control effect, which in turn allows Aspect of the Umbral to proc and regen some spirit, making you capable of more smash. With this additional damage, when you select Wild Impulses, you can make good on that extra spirit you now have, and what better way to capitalize than Shockwave Aspect, which turns the skill into a massive AoE that benefits from all of the other combinations we've already shared, and I'd consider this the second most important aspect, so keep an eye out for it. Again, that's Shockwave Aspect. Now, we could go on for longer about all the synergies here, but there's a lot of people who are probably now interested in this rock solid build, and it's important to keep things in perspective. This build started as a leveling build with the main intent to quickly gain levels with as few requirements as possible, which means no unique items, no aspects that weren't available from normal dungeons, and a strong emphasis on minimal time in town tweaking items. Essentially, it was meant just to pick up and play, catering to the many players with low amounts of free time to enjoy the game, which is amazing, because by level 75 or higher, you've likely got plenty of materials, gold, and other in-game resources like aspects saved up, and you can quickly shapeshift your character into a boulder breaker like this. At this point, the focus remains on quick clears, and these skill point selections have that in mind. Fierce Storm Strike will be the generator, and it's for the vulnerability effect. Although we run Exploit, it has a limited uptime on non-trash mobs, and Storm Strike has no internal cooldown, perfect for bosses. Primal Pulverize will help with survivability, while Wild Impulses and Predatory Instincts help with damage output. Iron Fur is yet another damage reduction in our main form and persists for plenty long when we quickly swap to humanoid form periodically for things like Preserving Earthen Bulwark, which greatly increases our survivability and adds another source of Fortify to benefit from the previously mentioned synergies. Ferocious Poison Creeper, and this ability can still kill monsters outright when cast, increasing your clear speed, but on top of that, it can really help you get everything lined up. That way, a Pulverize then wipes the screen. You can take either version of Trample. Savage Trample is great for bashing enemies into a wall and immediately following up with 1 or 2 Pulverizes, and we'll use that in this guide. Crushing Earth, Stone Guard, and Safeguard all synergize as mentioned before, and Neurotoxin is a great 1-point wonder. Whether you want to put 3 points into Envenom or Natural Disaster is up to you, but I'd still grab Neurotoxin regardless. Defiance, Circle of Life, and Resonance, where I'd still put 1 point in Circle of Life if you take Natural Disaster, is a great 1-point wonder to just give some health regen to your character. Quick Shift, Supreme Grizzly Rage, and Earthsign Strength will finish up the build, adding more damage, additional life, and an unstoppable. The Paragon Board is constantly shifting based on how many points you have available. The version shown here is a solid path that will allow you to keep progressing, but be mindful that depending on your exact number of points, you might be able to min-max something to squeak more value out of it. It's worth noting, I've skipped Ancestral Guidance at this point, as the damage output is enough, and the plan is to pick it up later when more damage is needed. The Werebear Glyph will not have the bonus effect until level 15, and aside from that, everything else is straightforward, and you can use the link in the description to pull this up on D4 builds, where it's likely much easier to follow. Regarding important stats, you still don't need to be super critical about which stats you fine-tune, but that doesn't mean you want to ignore the better ones. Stats like Overpower damage, Core Skill damage, Earth damage, and Werebear damage are all great for offensive stats. You'll need some elemental resistance as you continue onward, with bonus life and % total armor being very good defensive stats for this build as well. There's also damage reduction, which is just great for any build. Overall, I'd still recommend saving materials where possible. There's plenty to be learned about this build over the next couple of weeks, and since the build is still more than capable of clearing the vast majority of content without any difficulty whatsoever, those materials might be better served later on. Your Vampiric Powers will be limited by your armor pieces, and what you have equipped at any moment may change. The following are some good selections to choose from. Hemomancy, an incredible AoE and heal, is perhaps the strongest of all the Vampiric Powers. Domination has some synergy with Poison Creeper and a very low cast to activate. Anticipation allows higher uptime on Grizzly Rage for better armor and damage output. Sanguine Brace adds Fortify. Prey on the Weak synergizes very well with Exploit and Storm Strike. And although a steep cost, Blood Boil can take advantage of all the overpower potential this build has to offer. Look for a two-handed weapon to maximize your damage per Pulverize, and a staff is ideal since the implicit property scales better than the other two-handed weapons. And as far as variants, Wind Shear is an option for a generator ability, and if you're lucky enough to get Insatiable Fury, you can use Maul and Demoralizing Roar in place of Poison Creeper and Storm Strike. This is because we aren't dedicating any essences to them, and the only one you'd possibly have to move would be from the chest slot to equip the actual unique armor. I hope you're continuing to enjoy the guide series for Diablo 4 Druid this season, and thanks for taking the time to watch.